The truth is speaking. It's Gen Pop Laz, certified cash. They don't know though. Lazatola. Hey yo, LAZ, make sure you check that store link in the descriptions and in the comment section. Now I mean, and cop up one of them Gen Pop tees, hoodies, or accessories. Yurt.
Grew up on Cassidy by Franklin and Lafayette. Took a lot of L's, still excelling, they ain't stopped me yet. They ain't wanna hand over.
Hey yo, don't sleep. Real spitters with real bars is still out there, you heard? Check out the bro Sick in the Head from Staten Island. Link is in the comment section and in the description to this video. He blacking.
Back then, but he was one of them, you know, kind of upper echelon dudes, and he was getting ready to bag me for the chain. You know what I'm saying? And Bark was sticking in the back. And somehow he must have seen the move, you know, because that's what made Bark so powerful, because of the whole Tomahawk, Brownsville and everything. So, you know, he guard for real. And he seen the move getting ready to go down. And all I remember him saying, yo, Mo, better not touch no guards, you know? And,
the year is 1989, Hell's Kitchen. And I grew up on 50th Street all the way down near 11th Avenue, like in the gutter all the way in the west, right? And those of you know, people who know about Hell's Kitchen back in the day, it was just, I mean, it was grimy. Crack took that neighborhood by storm, like hard, really took over everything. It was an epidemic for real.
Yeah, the welfare hotels was over there.
Well, I mean, it was crack took over, and I had pimps and hookers were all over the neighborhood, like all over. And like, I'm talking like, it's kind of goofy shit where they're wearing full mink purple suits made out of mink, like shit, like you think it's a movie shoot, but it was real. Those were just real pimps. So, you know, and then of course you remember back then the neighborhood had wildin', people would wild out, and you know, like on Halloween, they would wild out in general, but like on the nights like Halloween and whatever, it would be out of control. Like I used to go play basketball, and the second the sun would go down, there would be it was a crack park. So the second the sun would go down, there'd just be a line of crackheads. They'd be in a single file line, just real straight, waiting patiently for their crack. You know, it was out of control. It was all over the place. So I grew up in the Tenement in Hell's Kitchen. So one night in '89, at this point I am, I think, 12 years old. Now, those of you who grew up in the Tenements know that we used to have those gates on the windows. You know, those gates that kind of accordion gates that you pull, the like metal gates, so people can't come in. So my gate, for some reason, was broken. But it was broken. So it's like 4 a.m, and I'm sleeping. And now this was dead summer. It was hot as shit. We didn't have air conditioning. And it was the first night and the last night I slept naked because it was so hot, right? So I'm 12 years old. So about 4 a.m, I hear that accordion gate rattling, like wildly rattling. So it wakes me up. I go over to the bedroom, and my mom happened to be sleeping. It was just me and my mom happened to be sleeping in the living room. So that the bedroom where the rattling is, nobody's in there. I go to look, and I see this crackhead, just his body's halfway through into the apartment, rattling around like crazy. I think he's a crackhead. I mean, I just see a dude coming in. Now, we'd been robbed before, but this is the first time that it happened when we were there, right at home. So right away, I'm like, oh shit. So I go to my mother, I wake her up. I'm like, Mom, somebody's coming in. She's like, oh, later. I'm like, no, now, get up. Somebody's coming in. So my mom grabs a knife, right, goes in, and then it's quiet, and I'm waiting. You know, it's like a movie scene where I'm just waiting to see, and then out of nowhere, I hear, fucking run! So my mom tells me to run. So now, mind you, I'm butt naked, right? I start running, and as I'm running, I turn around and look, and I see the dude is pulling for a piece out of his waistband, right? And he was wearing all white, which leads me to believe he was a crackhead, because that's just a weird ensemble to put on while you're trying to break into somebody's house. So I run downstairs, and now mind you, I'm butt naked. I'm 12 years old, so I just started going through puberty, so it's just mad awkward. And my mom's like, tell somebody to call the cops. So I go down, I open the door, and the only person standing on the corner was a hooker. And I was like, yo, call the cops. And she was like, hell no, and walked away. And then eventually, I think the dude left the way he came out at the back of the building, and luckily nothing happened to us, but that was that story.
And you said you was out in the streets butt-ass naked?
Butt naked, covering myself with one hand, trying to just yell at a hooker to call the cops, you know. Yep.
What he took, though? He took some stuff?
He didn't, because I think the fact that we were there startled him. But, like, we had times where we'd come home and the window would be broken, and, like, it was just the typical shit in the movies. Like, they would take the VCR, you know, this is the 80s. Yeah, it happened a few times, but that was the first time when we were actually home that it happened.
Yeah, man, a lot of people don't know that back, because right now, Times Square, that whole area is so cleaned up, you would never know that back in the days, that shit was, like, really, really bad and terrible. When the arcades was there and Playland and all of that,
Yep.
Times Square, it was a real grimy place. I used to love it, though.
I used to go to the arcade. Did you remember they had that one news banner? It would be like a digital news banner that went around. Do you remember that?
You talking about Playland itself that was on like 45th?
Nah, I'm talking about the arcade. There was, I think it was 44th Street, and then it was a one building. It's right near where the ball drops. And it used to just be one digital banner of news. Do you remember that? And you could see it outside the arcade.
Yeah, you know, it was another arcade spot right there on 51st Street. Is a McDonald's there now. That McDonald's that's right there on like 51st or 50th and
9th?
Nah, like Broadway.
Oh.
Is a McDonald's that been there for 100 years now, but before that was there, it was another arcade. It wasn't Playland, it was a smaller arcade that was on 50th Street. But that's 50th or 51st. I think it's 50th though.
I don't really remember that one.
Yeah, it was a smaller joint. It was a smaller joint, but it was there for some years. But that was in the early 90s though.
Right. I mean, past 8th Avenue, it was always kind of decent. Like, you know, because Hell's Kitchen, people don't realize, like, Hell's Kitchen has specific parameters as far as I'm concerned. It was 44th Street to 57th, and you had to be below 8th Avenue.
What you mean, you had to be 9th and better?
Yeah, you had to be 9th Avenue and then down and west.
Or 8th and better. Or 8th and better. Because 8th was terrible. 8th was the worst. 8th is still bad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess what I'm used to, like, I remember going down 9th Avenue, right? And because my neighborhood that I grew up, it was mostly black and Puerto Ricans. So, like, you'd walk down and it would have all these little bodegas. And these were the bodegas, because you know now bodegas are all, like, Middle Eastern Arab. Like, Arabs run the dopest bodegas. But when I was coming up, it was actually Hispanics. Like, that's why they named them bodegas. And 9th Avenue would just be all bodegas. There'd be dudes on lawn chairs playing dominoes, you know, with the fucking pumping the freestyle music. And that's what it was.
I never knew it was a whole bunch of Latin people in Hell's Kitchen. I thought it was mostly Irish.
That's what everybody thinks who's not from. Irish left around the 60s and 60s, and then maybe in the beginning of the 70s, but started in the mid 70s straight through until probably like 2000. It was black and Hispanic primarily, and then you did have pockets of like Irish, but nah, that wasn't what it was. That was that was like 50s, 60s was when the Irish were really taking over.
What was that gang? What was that Irish gang out there?
Westies.
Yeah, the Westies.
But they weren't, see, there you go. So they weren't around. I grew up right across the street from Park West High School. Do you remember Park West?
Yeah, I went to graphics, printing.
There you go. You went right by me. So yeah. So the Decepticons were the gang that I used to, man.
I got 100 stories on the channel about Decepticons, and literally I'm editing a goddamn epic movie right now, a Decepticon story that I'm about to drop.
Really?
Yeah, bro. I got a story on my channel called Cybertron, Decepticon Headquarters. That was graphics. And I got a story about the beef between graphics and Park West.
You guys had beef?
Did we? This was in the 90s. I was there in 90, 91, 92. We had heavy beef with Park West. I mean, me personally, I was cutting a lot of school, but the Decepticons that was in Park West and just regular students in Park West had beef with the Decepticons and the regular students that was in graphics, and it got real ugly, like gunfire and all of that.
Man, I remember there was this diner called Munson Diner on 11th Avenue and 49th Street. It was actually in the movie, the Studio 54 movie, the one with, what the fuck's his name? It's the Canadian dude, Saturday Night Live, Austin Powers. What's escaping me what his name is? Mike Myers. So it was a diner that was like a big trailer. It was like one of those old school trailers, but it was a diner. It had been there, for years. But when I was growing up, it had turned into a spot where either cab drivers would come, park their car, go in, whatever, yellow cabs, or hookers would go, stop there, go in the bathroom, clean themselves off or whatever, and leave. So my mom knew one of the dudes who worked at the diner, this Israeli guy. So we would go there a lot. That was like our fancy night out. Let's go get a fucking shitty burger and a soda from Munson. But we would go there. And one morning I wake up and my mother has a black eye. So I'm like, what happened? She goes, my mother's from Bulgaria. My mother's like a third, like off the boat from Bulgaria. Bulgaria, I don't know if you know much about it, but it's like a third world, like, Eastern European real kind of. So she was tough. But she basically said that, she goes that this hooker came in and she was all beaten up and bloodied, and then the pimp came in right behind her and started like pushing her or punching her or some shit. So my mom got up, was like, leave her alone, and then her and the pimp started fighting, fist fighting, my mom and the pimp, and that's how she got the black eye. So I was like, Jesus. My mom was it was something different. It was those Europeans, Eastern Europeans.
Yeah, they definitely different.
Yeah, so that's what the neighborhood was, though. It was all, I mean, Brownsville must have been, actually, I bet you, this is what I try and tell people, and tell me if you agree. I think Manhattan, us Manhattanites, which is, I think, what we're called, right, Manhattanites, we had it the worst than Brooklyn, the Bronx, because this is from my understanding, and I had friends who lived in the Bronx and Brooklyn. There's a bit of a community in all the other boroughs where, like, if something happens, you're probably going to know somebody who did it, or know somebody who knows who did it, or know somebody's sister who did it, or because it's more of a community. And the projects, especially, are real community-based. I'm not saying it's all flowers and roses community. I don't mean like that, but just everybody knows each other kind of thing. But in Manhattan, you always have people, tourists, or just people from the outer boroughs coming in, doing wild shit and just leaving, and nobody's ever held accountable in Manhattan. That's why they could get away with so much shit. So for us, that's what I saw growing up. It was worse, because not only because something happened to you, but you have no chance of ever getting any kind of get back or finding out who did it or nothing like that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that made livings off of coming to Midtown and pillaging.
There you go. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, so it was, man, it started changing up, I want to say right around 2000 is when I started, like, in Hell's Kitchen specifically, the gay community started moving in. They just cleaned it up. Looks beautiful now.
Yeah, it's a bunch of food over there now.
Yeah, Ninth Avenue's all restaurants.
You still got, it's crazy because you still got New York City housing like Harborview, which is like everybody wants to get in that project. I wish I could get in there. Harborview.
Which one is that?
That's like on. That may not still be. I think it is Hell's Kitchen, because in that little projects they got a mural that says Hell's Kitchen. But that's on 60th Street.
And what?
And
60. Oh, the project's right there. Yeah. I went.
Not Amsterdam. Not Amsterdam.
No, I know what you're talking about. All the way. No, it's on 11th Ave. I know what you're talking about. That's on 11th.
Harborview.
That's what those. I didn't even know what those were called. I used to go walk by those all the time. Those were the most docile projects I could think of. Like, you never saw shit going on really there.
Nobody knows it exists. And let me tell you something. It's such an exclusive projects that years back, maybe 10 years back, they found out that it was all type of people in there that lied about their income to get in there, because the views were breathtaking.
Wow.
So people was in there paying $500 rent when they had a lot of money, but they just wanted to be in Harborview.
Are those straight projects, or are those like government subsidized?
Those is NYCHA.
Okay, because on the corner where I grew up, there's this building called 747. You're familiar with that, right? You know what what I'm talking about?
You talking about the building that Alicia Keys grew up in?
No, that one's on 44th Street. This one, actually, Lisa grew up in this one. You remember Lisa, the freestyle singer?
Yeah, facts.
She grew up in 747. It's on 50th. So the Alicia Keys one is it's an artist. It's for artists. The one I'm talking about was government subsidized. So I think there's a long waiting list, and it goes by how much you make. That's what they charge your rent. So it's cheaper.
You said it's on 50th?
Yeah, right on the corner where I grew up. 50th. It's on the corner of 50th and 10th Avenue. 747 10th Avenue.
I gotta know the building because I know the whole area. Because like I said, I went to graphics.
Well, so when you would go to Park West, when you would go, Park West is between 10th and 11th, right? Mm-hmm. This is on the corner of 10th as you're walking down towards Park West. It's the big building right there, right on the corner.
It was government subsidized or something.
It was government subsidized, but it was basically a project because all kinds of knuckleheads and that building. So it's about, I want to say, 30 stories high, and I would walk down the block, right? And dudes would be like, you would have toasters crashing by your feet. Dudes would be throwing shit off the balconies at you from like 20 or 30 stories up. 747 is the number of the building because that's how we knew. That's what we called it in the neighborhood, was 747. And it was government. So I've been in, a couple of my friends over the years live there. So I went and I saw them, what they look like. They're a step above projects in terms of how it's built, how it looks, but it's still, everybody who lives in there is low income. Everybody. And a lot of them were like grandfathered in, and it had a lot of just like thugs living in it basically. So they would, so there was a period in time where you didn't even walk on that side of the street because it would throw shit at you. It could kill you. Like a padlock coming down from 30 stories up or 25 stories up, whatever it is, that'll kill you. So that went on for a while too. So you just wouldn't walk on that side of the street at a certain time.
I'm looking at it on the map right now.
Yeah, you see it? You see how big it is?
I'm waiting for the damn map to load. It's taking forever.
Oh, it's not loading?
I'm gonna see it once it loads.
Oh, it's there, yeah, and it's been there since I can remember. So it's been there at least since the late 70s. And Alicia grew up in that one specifically. Alicia Keys grew up on 44th Street, I think, and 44th and 10th. I forget the name of it, what it's called. There's this other rapper from there. This white kid was a rapper. I forget his name. He grew up in that building. He's younger though.
When I think of Irish and Hell's Kitchen, I think of the residents, but I also know and understand that Hell's Kitchen was a serious place for hustlers from all over the place, and lost souls and lowest of the low and sleaze bags and people that's on the run for crimes in other cities and states. They will all end up in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
Trying to survive.
They absolutely would, man. Numerous times in the old school, when they would run, the dude would be running full speed and grab the purse and keep running. That happened to my mother a few times. I mean, it was just daily. And the rats, the size of the rats in Hell's Kitchen were. So there was how outside of the tenements they have garbage cans lined up, outside of every tenement there's just 4 or 5 garbage cans. There would be. I'm not exaggerating. There would be 20 to 30 cock diesel rats just going through the garbage at all times every night. And this continued up until one day when I was 15 or 16. One of my boys, I was talking to him, and we were talking about it. He goes, "Yo, why don't you call 311?" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, say something to him. Tell him that there's rats." I called 311, and within 2 weeks, gone. And that just shows you the mentality of the neighborhood because nobody thought to do that. Nobody. Nobody it was rats for 20 years at least. I can remember there being children. And nobody thought to do that once. And I get it, because I didn't think to do it until, because you get accustomed to a certain environment. He's like, "Oh, there's the rats." You know what I mean?
Yeah, them shits be down there nowadays, though. I mean,
they are.
It may not be as crazy as the 80s and shit, but them rats be out of control in the city. All you gotta do is go through there at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and you'll see the true colors of New York with the rat situation.
I know harassment, and like the roach situation when I was coming up was like turn on the light and they just scatter, like 30 of them.
You said it was like that in Hell's Kitchen too?
Tenements, yeah. Hell's Kitchen was Tenements, like all Tenements. And yeah, because Tenements are older than projects, way older. Tenements are, early 1900s construction. Projects are probably what, 60s, 70s construction, right? So you guys got elevators. Did you grow up in the projects?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you had an elevator, right? I didn't have any elevators. I had to walk up a narrow ass, 3 flights. Like it was. So ours are worse because the plumbing's older. We get the rust water coming through. You get the roaches, because there's more holes. The foundation of the building is degrading. So you just the tenements. People don't realize tenements. I think personally were way worse than projects. Maybe not way worse, but worse. Like in a lot of ways.
Some of them tenements was superly run down. I lived in one of them when I was young in Park Slope, way before Park Slope was what it is now.
I live in Park Slope now.
That shit was, I used to live on St. Mark's between 4th and 5th. And that shit was beyond fucked up.
It was bad because Park Slope mostly has brownstones, right? And then there's a tenement sprinkled in.
Yeah, what it was back then is, you had brownstones and then you had tenements that were like dilapidated, like next level fucked up, that people shouldn't even been living in. And they was right next door to people with houses. You feel what I'm saying? And my building was one of those tenement buildings that was like, people thought it was an abandoned building. I always say that, but that's what it was. People thought it was an abandoned building.
Right. So even for you, in your experience, the tenements were more fucked up than the projects.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the projects, you may have some heat that you could rely on some. You might be able to rely on some heat and hot water in the projects, but in the tenement buildings, sometimes you might not have hot water for weeks. It happens in the projects too. But over the years, it became a little bit easier. It became a little bit more reliable sometimes. Hot water, heat. You ain't have to worry about shit like that. You don't got to pay light and gas in the projects. But in tenement buildings, you got to pay that light and gas, baby.
Well, when you guys, in the projects, when something would go wrong, there was like a super, who would you hit up?
They got housing. They got people you call housing, and they just send a maintenance worker to your apartment to fix the problem.
So did they do it? Were they on it like professionally, or did it just?
I mean, you got some housing dudes that they're good at what they do, and then you got some housing dudes that they don't really know too much, man. So they just winging it with trying to fix your shit.
Right. So with us, it was whatever landlords and slumlord you're dealing with. So you're absolutely right. You guys, at least it's city funded, so it's with us, you're right, man. That shit would. I mean, I went without heat. I can't even tell you for how long, and I mean, shit. And then if it was a hole or whatever, like you said, nobody would fix shit, and there's nothing you can really do because nobody in the tenements is going to sue somebody or take them to court. People don't realize in New York City, tenants have crazy rights, but tenants don't know that. You know what I mean? And they can't afford a lawyer to go to court for it. My mother was smart though. My mother found this. There are these pro bono like companies that defend housing, tenants housing in New York City. It's made for people like my mother, like people with immigrants that can't afford lawyers. So she found them, and years later we had our whole shit upgraded. I mean, it was upgraded literally in 2000. It should have been upgraded 15, 20 years earlier by code, because we still had the old sink with the hot and the cold. We had everything old. And then my mother finally found that law firm that did that for people like her. And then as soon as the law firm hit up the landlords with official letters and all that, they were real quick to do what they were supposed to do legally.
The truth is speaking. It's Gen Pop Laz, certified cash. They don't know though. Lazatola. Hey yo, LAZ, make sure you check that store link in the descriptions and in the comment section. Now I mean, and cop up one of them Gen Pop tees, hoodies, or accessories. Yurt.
Grew up on Cassidy by Franklin and Lafayette. Took a lot of L's, still excelling, ain't stopping yet. They ain't wanna hand over.
Hey yo, don't sleep. Real spitters with real bars is still out there, you heard? Check out the bro Sick in the Head from Staten Island. Link is in the comment section and in the description to this video. He blacking.
Back then. But he was one of the, kind of upper echelon dudes. And he was getting ready to bag me for the chain. You know what I'm saying? And Bark was sitting in the back. And somehow he must have seen the move, because that's what made Bark so powerful, because of the whole Tomahawk, Brownsville and everything. So, he guard for real. And he seen the move getting ready to go down. And all I remember him saying, better not touch no guards, And